Hey everyone, it's Tox from critshappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. We're about a month past Gen Con 2013 that took place this year once again in Indianapolis in the United States. Gen Con is amazing. It's the best 4 days in gaming where you get to reconnect with good friends, sit down around the table and play great games, learn about new games that are coming up on the horizon, and see new games that have just been released at the con as well. Well, we brought home a ton of games. Some we've done previous reviews on, some we've done recent reviews on, but we have a dozen today to look at in the Critical Strike format. If you're unfamiliar with our Critical Strikes, we normally take 3 games, do about 15 to 20 minute video, give you the highlights, the lowlights, and then give them a crit, a hit, or a miss rating. Well, this time we're going to look at every game that we haven't reviewed yet that we have brought back with us from Gen Con. I have a dozen games ranging from space to fantasy, to dragons, to you name it. We've got everything on the plate today. So come with me and let's jump into the post-Gen Con Critical Strike. Well, apparently I can't count. We actually have 13 games, not 12 games. That's how many we're about to go through. And as you can see by everything laid out in front of me, we have a lot. So this is going to be both a fast and furious Critical Strike. Now, one thing I'm very, very excited about. Nothing that you see on this table is a miss. Every single thing that we brought home is either a hit or a crit. And the big question is, does this side of the table get crits? Or does this side of the table get crits? Or is it all mixed up? Well, come with me. We're going to take a look at everything we've got out in front of us. From Asmodee, we have Spyrium and Rise of Augustus. From Level 99 Games, we have 7-card Slugfest and Pixel Tactics 2. From Cryptozoic, we have a game that we recently did a critical playthrough of. We have Gravwell. From Yellow, we have The Three Little Pigs, a deceptive little game. From Calliope Games, we have Tsuro of the Seas. From Mayfair, we've got Star Trek Catan and the Downfall of Pompeii. From Stoneblade Entertainment, we have the latest expansion for Ascension, Darkness Unleashed. From Floodgate Games, we have Legacy Forbidden Machines, the follow-up to Legacy, the time-traveling deck-building or card game. Then we have the Dragon Whisperer from the Albino Dragon. And then finally, the AEG Obligatory Cthulhu expansion to smash up. There is a lot on this table, so let's jump in with our first game. So first up, we're going out into space with Gravwell from Cryptozoic Entertainment. The story that I was told, and I don't know if this is true or not, sure we can confirm with Corey Young, the designer, as he's very active on Twitter. But the story I was told by several different Cryptozoic employees was that basically at Gen Con 2012, Corey Young, the designer of Gravwell, walked into Cryptozoic's booth and said, "I'm not leaving until you play my game." A year later, we have Gravwell sitting in front of us from Cryptozoic. This is one of those games that's simple to learn, easy to teach, and hard to master. It's for 2 to 4 players, plays in about 20 to 30 minutes, and is extremely cool in concept. You are one of 4 different ships trapped on the other side of a black hole inside of a singularity. You have no energy, and you have to mine or draft cards that represent different elements that are going to help you get out through this spiral maze past derelict ships that are also trapped but have no way of moving outside of you impacting them to get to the final destination, which is a warp gate. Now, that sounds really simple. You want to play the card with the highest move and get out as fast as possible. Well, as I said, you're on the other side of a black hole. Physics have been flipped upside down. Essentially what happens is when you play a card, there's 3 different types. There is a move, a push, and a pull. And depending on the situation of the game, you could be pulled forward to ships closer to you, moving you outwards, or you could be pulled backwards towards the singularity again, depending on how close you are to other ships. It's all about proximity to your closest neighbor. And the best part about the game is that everything takes place all at once. At the beginning of the game, you're going to draft cards, and all the cards are going to be laid out depending on the number of players involved. There's going to be different amounts of stacks. But the cards are going to be laid out with one card face down and one card face up. So everyone is going to get to see half of what someone's strategy is that they're drafting. And that makes for the most fun guesswork and deduction that I've had in a long time in a game. Because you'll know the situation, everyone will have access to what's on the table, and you'll know some of the cards your opponents chose. And the question becomes, what are they going to play, when are they going to play it, and how can you play something to go ahead of them or after them and gain the advantage? All of the cards, when they're revealed, get resolved from A to Z order. So just because you have a card that's like a T or a U that has a huge move, doesn't mean you're going to be flying forward, because somebody else could play something with a lower letter, change the scenario, and move you backwards. And that makes it extremely fun and extremely exciting. I've heard several people say that there's a lot of luck involved with Gravwell, and I really don't think that's right. What really comes down to is it's a lot of guesswork of what you believe your opponent's going to play and when they're going to play it. Now sure, like any other game, if you're sitting across from human players, there's always an opportunity for someone to just randomly do something that you would not expect. But this game keeps everybody engaged, and even when the crazy randomness does come up, it is a very exciting and very fun moment. All of the games have been very close. We've had games that have had within 1 or 2 spaces of everybody winning, and they're always down to the wire, whether it's 2 or 4 player games. At the end of the day, Gravwell has been something that we have enjoyed immensely, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 players, with young and with old. So at the end of the day, Gravwell gets a crit from Crits Happen. Next up, we stay in space to boldly go where no Catan game has gone before. This is Star Trek Catan from Mayfair Games. Now, there's a lot of Catan games. A lot of Catan games. Why would this be any different, and would it be good for anyone who's not a fan of Star Trek? Well, it is very different, and yes, it is great for people who are not fans of Star Trek. I am not a fan of Star Trek. I'm actually a fan of Star Wars. But this game is fun. So fun, it's the best version of Catan I've ever played. Why? How could it be any different? Well, for starters, there's no sheep in space. But you have different types of resources like food, water, and you're trying to build out outposts or star bases to get 10 points, just like most other Catan games. However, what makes this game different are the role cards. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to be dealt a specific role card based on their play order between player 1, 2, 3, or 4. From there, on their turn, or when a specific event happens in the game, they're going to be able to activate their player's role. The role can either be activated, flipped over, activated again on a subsequent turn, and then turned in exchange to get a new role, or can be played once and turned in immediately then. There's only 10 of them, but they are very, very keen in terms of strategic impact to the game. And if you play it right, it doesn't always mean you're going to use it twice and turn it in. There's a lot of times we've played this game where people have only used a role card once, shifted to another role to get a follow-on subsequent benefit that they know their strategy is going to build to, and has really made it a lot of fun. These small little 10 additions to the game have made it a completely different play style for me and my play group, and I'm sure would bring enjoyment to you and yours if you like the Catan universe. It's very familiar if you're usual players of Catan, in that you're going to be rolling, you're going to be getting resources based off your rolls, you're going to be using those resources to build different things, either star bases or outposts or ships, and then you're going to be drawing fleet cards to help you impact the game more or get more points as well. Overall, if you like Catan, this is a great addition to your collection. If you don't like Star Trek, I would still highly recommend to check it out, because these role cards really make the game a lot more engaging and a lot more fun. And if you'd like to see how the game plays out, you can check out Geek and Sundry. Tabletop just did a playthrough of this recently, and they did a great job showing all the different intricacies of the ins and the outs of the role cards and all of the different planetary systems. My personal favorite, of course, oh my, Mr. Tsuro. He allows you to take a starship and pick it up off the map and put it somewhere else in your adjacent chains. that can become extremely impactful depending on the timing. And that's what makes it the most fun, because there's different opportunities through the game where normally in a game of Catan you wouldn't have a chance to change something or shift something, and now you do, and that makes it very, very enjoyable. At the end of the day, Star Trek Catan is going to get a boldly going where no Catan has gone before crit from Crits Happen. Next up, we go from space to time travel to be exact. We have Floodgate Games' Legacy Forbidden Machines. Now, unfortunately, I've actually loaned this game to a friend, so I don't have the cards to be able to just put everything out in front of me. It is good to know that you do need to have the base game of Legacy so that you have the board, the timeline track, all the different things to keep track of what's going to happen throughout this game. Technically, you don't need to if you understand the game well enough. You could play this without the main track, but it is extremely helpful to have that. We did a critical review of Legacy, the Gears of Time, which was last year's first Floodgate Games release. It was on Kickstarter, as was Forbidden Machines. We picked up Forbidden Machines this year from Ben and Floodgate Games at Gen Con, and I can't even begin to describe how cool this game has gotten. Now, I had some challenges understanding and learning the intricacies of Gears of Time, because there's so many different things that are happening throughout the gameplay, and there's a lot of different things to keep track of. I'm really happy to say that from discussing things with Ben, the owner of Floodgate Games and the designer of Legacy, and understanding what has changed in this game, there's a lot of really cool improvements they've made. In fact, they've even reprinted Gears of Time with a lot of the changes, which is really, really impactful. So one of the things that I always had a challenge with when I was playing Gears of Time was keeping track of technologies that failed and how to mark them off and have counters and things like that that I always had to pull from other games. Well, this and the second printing of Gears of Time now have counters to help keep track of that, which are really cool and a great addition to the game. But in addition, the cards also now have little notations and little boxes on each side of prerequisites and technologies that they lead to. Now, what am I talking about? If you don't understand Gears of Time and you don't know what Forbidden Machines is, you have no clue what I'm explaining here. Well, let's talk a little bit about this game. This is a time-traveling game where 2 to 4 players are going to be going back through time periods and establishing technologies. There is a huge factor of never having enough time to do what you want to do, nor enough resources to do what you want to do. So you have to plan very carefully. For example, I could go back in time and create fire. However, I can't go forward in time to create something in the same turn unless I have the right cards in my hand to then build off of fire. Different technologies will lead to more advanced technologies, and that is the most intricate, fun part of the game, is plotting out a strategy of what you can go furthest back in time to create to then go forward in time in future turns, or not as far back really in future turns, and establish technologies that are going to feed off of the previously established technologies. To me, the most fun in the game comes from when other players are trying to steal your technologies through influence. Each turn you're going to have influence cubes that you're going to be able to put on other technologies that maybe you established or maybe you didn't. And there's always going to be a struggle for both creating and chaining technologies, but also influencing them to get points. It is, very honestly and transparently, a challenging game to learn, but for those that take the time to learn it, it is a tremendously unique and very fun game. And very much like our previous 2 games, this too is going to get a crit. It is something that has been improved, it is something that has been added on to, but not taken away from. I always worry whenever an expansion comes out if something is going to be eroded, and I'm really happy to say that everything from Gears of Time got better in Forbidden Machines. Now, Forbidden Machines is not, let's shuffle all these cards into Gears of Time. It is very much play by itself. But the technologies, the abilities, the impacts, the things that they have changed to do little tiny tweaks to the gameplay to make it even more engaging and even more fun has been extremely, extremely enjoyable. It is a very challenging game to string different technologies together, but when you do, it is oh so fulfilling. So, like our previous two games, this too, Legacy Forbidden Machines, is going to get a crit from Crits Happen. So everything's been a crit so far, so let's see where we go next. Well, we've gone through space, we've gone through time. Now we've unleashed the demons. Sitting in front of me is the Smash Up expansion, the Obligatory expansion, called the Cthulhu set. The Cthulhu set adds 4 new decks, 4 new factions that you can mix together, and also adds a brand new action called Madness. Madness allows you to draw cards. However, there is not always a great benefit to doing that. It says draw 2 cards or return this card to the Madness deck. Now, this is an interesting set. I really like Smash Up. It's very random, it's very goofy, it's very wild, and it's a fun time around the table. It's not the most highly strategic game, although it can be at times, but it's more about the experience of sitting down and playing with some good friends and having a good laugh. This set strikes me as curious, and here's why. I've tried playing this with multiple different combinations from the original set and the Awesome Level 9000 expansion, and nothing has really felt right. And I feel it comes down to this Madness piece. And here's why. A lot of the cards in this set will help you manage your madness and help you deal with the madness. However, when you mix them with the other cards from the other set, it doesn't always work. There's a lot of times that your deck just gets filled up with madness cards because there's different things giving you madness, and you may or may not have factions to be able to get rid of them. The other thing that I've learned is that if you kind of mix this set with other sets, it's really best if each player in the game has one faction from this set. And that makes it a little challenging to manage because you may not always want to have something from this set and something from the old set. At the end of the day, I really feel that this game sits best on its own. By itself, it's very, very fun. As always, the artwork's phenomenal. They've done just a tremendous job making each faction feel like itself. In addition to that, the abilities are very unique, as always, to these factions. They're great on their own combined with themselves. The bases are very good on their own combined with this, or just with this set. The challenges come in, though, when you do mix them with other sets. And because of that, as much as we like Cthulhu, and as much as we enjoy Smash Up, this is only going to get a hit from Crits Happen. Now, that does not mean by any means at all that it's a bad game. Hits are very fun and very exciting, and this by itself is going to provide a very fun time. I do think that those who are not too into Cthulhu will probably not enjoy this as much as Awesome Level 9000. So if you only have the Smash Up set and you have a choice between one expansion, the Awesome Level 9000 may work out better for people who aren't fans of Cthulhu. But for anyone who is a fan of Cthulhu, or everyone who likes a little bit of madness in their life, Smash Up's Obligatory Cthulhu set will probably be right up your alley to add to your Smash Up lineup. Switching fantasy themes in a different direction, we're now going to take a look at the Albino Dragon's Dragon Whisperer. Many of you may remember this as the Dragon's Bard, which was the original Kickstarter name of this game, postponed and then brought back in a little bit different style. This first is amazing that all of this fits in this little tiny box. One of the things I really enjoyed about the Albino Dragon games is they all fit inside of a box this size. They're very portable and they're very easy to take with you. This is for 3 to 6 people, can take anywhere from 30 to about 45 minutes, and is really, really simple to teach. It is essentially a trick-taking game where you're trying to gain the most points. That doesn't necessarily mean winning the most tricks, though. The first thing to know about this game is it has one of my favorite artists in the gaming industry right now, which is Shane Tyree. His artwork is absolutely phenomenal, and it pops off of all of these cards and off of the board. Now, each turn, players are going to be dealt cards. You're going to have a dragon token that is going to go to one of the several different questing areas. And on top of a stack of tokens are going to be a value of 1 to 5, and you don't know what's beneath them, and they've all been randomized. The first person is going to start a trick. Just like spades or hearts, they're going to pick a color and a number. They're going to play that color down, and from there, people are going to have to play based off of that color. If everyone plays the same color, then whoever has the highest number gets that trick. There are some abilities of different cards as well in the game that will get you gold or get you monster tokens. At the end of the game, gold gives you points. Monster tokens will only give you points based on whoever has the most. So it's a little bit of a fight and a little bit of a hunting challenge to see who can get the most throughout the gameplay. So there's going to be times throughout the game where you may want to win the trick, but it may actually be more beneficial for you to play a card that is of the same suit, but gives you an ability to get a token that gets you points for your strategy versus actually winning the trick. And that's what makes this game very, very interesting. It's a little challenging at first because in addition to the trick, there are trumps. There's going to be remaining set of cards that don't get dealt out to everyone, that at the beginning of each trick, a top card is going to be turned over and it could or could not be the same color as the leading color of the trick. That color is the trump color. So if I start off with a blue, for example, and the top card from that remaining deck is a red, the player after me would have to play on suit from the color that I played. Or if they don't have one of those, they could play a red and trump me. So while I may have the highest number colored card of the starting trick color, the next player could trump me potentially and beat me out for it. The thing is, the players never know what the next trump is going to be. So there's a little bit of luck, a little bit of strategy, and a whole lot of engagement involved in Dragon Whisperer. The artwork, again, is absolutely phenomenal. The components are great. They give you this nice tuck box. The card quality, the actual card stock is phenomenal. It's been an absolute joy. In fact, as much as I like sleeving my cards, I can't do that with these because they feel so good in terms of a little bit of graininess and just great connection to the game itself. Now, one of the downsides is that I had a chance to see this game when it was Dragon's Bard. The board was much bigger and the dragon token was much cooler because it was a 3D model. It works for this and actually makes it a little bit better to be smaller and a little more portable. So that's been a really, really enjoyable piece of the game, as much as I miss that big dragon token as well. The monster tokens are very, very fun to fight over. The gold is very, very challenging to come by. And overall, this is a blast of a game. This is, in my opinion, the best game that Albino Dragon has put out to date. Richard Borg was the designer. As many of you may know, he is a world-known and well-renowned designer. Met him at Gen Con this year, had a chance to talk to him about this game, and it was just an absolute blast to talk about some strategies, get his input about how he designed and what he did. Very, very nice guy, and just had an absolute blast talking both with Eric, the owner of Albino Dragon, and with Richard, the designer of the game. At the end of the day, I'm really happy to say that we're back on the crit scale, and Dragon Whisperer gets a crit from Crits Happen. Next up, sticking still with our fantasy theme, takes us to Darkness Unleashed, the latest expansion from Stoneblade Entertainment for their popular deck building game known as Ascension. This is interesting. This one I struggled with quite a bit. I love Ascension. I think it's a great game. Lately, there's been some additions to the game that have made it different and interesting, putting it into more of a block format, as I would call it. Now, it is designed in that sense, in that there is a big set and a small set. This is the small set as compared to the big set of Rise of Vigil. And Rise of Vigil brought out Energy. Energy was a treasure card that allowed you to draw cards and create a threshold resource. Energy continues in Darkness Unleashed. However, there's dark energy as well, which will have fate effects when they come into the center row. The biggest thing that this game adds, though, to the complexity of Ascension is double-sided heroes. Now, the nice thing is that Stoneblade did a really good job of including the right amount of components, whether you sleeve your cards or whether you don't sleeve your cards. There are some cards in here that are what they call transforming heroes that will allow you to hit an energy threshold and transform them from one side to the other. If you're sleeving, that's great because you can have the card in the sleeve, you transform it, you pull it out, flip it around, and put it back in the sleeve. If you're not sleeving, then they have two different versions of the card, one that starts in the main deck, and then once you transform it, you will go and get the other one from the box, switch them out, and continue on. The thing that I've noticed that's very interesting about this expansion for Ascension, first, by itself, it's not that good. And here's why. There were big swings in Rise of Vigil, very big swings, 20, almost 25-point swings sometimes towards the end of the game that could make someone come back out of nowhere or make someone go ahead really, really far. There are even bigger swings in Ascension of Darkness Unleashed. The transformed heroes are great, but they're very, very, very powerful. And if somebody runs away with 2 or 3 of them, they could easily totally run over everybody else in the game. Now, I really feel that in the past, every small box expansion from Ascension has done a really good job of putting out a game that could stand on its own as a 2-player game and be very enjoyable. Unfortunately, this one on its own has been a bit of a challenge in all of our play game scenarios. There's always been a runaway leader, and it's always been very challenging to catch up. However, combining this with Rise of Vigil has been very, very fun. The added amount of cards make the transformation heroes a little harder to come by. I believe if I remember off the top of my head, there's about 13 transforming heroes. So when you combine the large stack of cards from Rise of Vigil, the good amount of cards from Darkness Unleashed, and put them all together, there's a lot less chance of finding multiple transforming heroes for one player to take advantage of. But together, between energy and dark energy, the threshold that you could have to achieve for different effects to happen, and the way that the cards in this set interact with the cards in Rise of Vigil, I really feel does a good job of bringing together the right complexity and the right strategies for this block. I've really enjoyed this with Rise of Vigil. Unfortunately, I haven't really enjoyed it on its own. So, where does that fit? It fits dead center of the hit category. On its own, it is a fun game, but it is something that would probably challenge most players to keep a competitive game at the table. However, if you have Rise of Vigil, and let's be frank, most people are going to be combining this with Rise of Vigil, it is a great time mixing everything together and makes the transforming heroes all that more powerful because it's so much harder to get a hold of them. So at the end of the day, Ascension Darkness Unleashed gets a hit from Crits Happen. Next up is 7-Card Slugfest from Level 99 Games, a game that teaches you beer is good and barroom fighting can be profitable. This was a game I didn't quite know what to think of when I first saw it and first heard of it. I went by the Level 99 Games booth primarily to check out Pixel Tactics 2 because I absolutely loved Pixel Tactics 1. And when I got there, D. Brad Dalton Jr., who is the owner of Level 99 Games, the designer of the majority of their games, decided to show me this. And I was pretty surprised. It was a very fast-paced, very different style party game. It's big. It's designed for 3 to 8 players. Each player is going to get a player plaque, and it's going to represent their character. In addition, there is this poor guy named Boris, who is the bartender, just kind of trying to keep things together. Each player has a deck of 7 cards. They're going to range in different values based on the amount of damage they're going to do to each other. What happens is each player is going to take their deck, and on the back side are numbers, which may lead you to believe, well, why would you want the backside to tell people what you're going to do? It's because the flip side may not always do just the number. What happens is a very big and important rule is that you are not allowed to play with 2 hands. You actually only play with 1 hand. And in a game, you're going to be taking a card off of your deck, you're looking at it, and you're going to play it face down on someone else's placard. This happens all at the same time. So in a multiplayer game, there's a lot of reaching, hand bumping, shifting, moving around, and things are going on. Once one player is completely out of all of their cards, placing them on different players' plaques, they're then allowed to take a beer token. Now, for example, this one says +3. If I was the first player and chose that, that is going to add health to my character. Everyone's character is going to start with the same health. So finishing first, getting your cards out, is a big advantage because you're going to be able to add strength to your character. Now, why does that matter? Because going around the table once everyone has finished playing their cards means that you're going to have to flip from top to bottom, from bottom to top. It's very important what's going to happen. So the first card that was played face down is going to be the first card resolved. As you move down that chain, the card that finally deals the knockout blow to a character is then going to give that character's face token to someone else to score points. So in a round, I may only knock one person out, while someone else may knock 4 people out. There's a lot of different strategies. The challenge is you're playing with one hand, and you have to do it very quickly with everyone else moving around the table. It is not the most strategic game because it's very fast and very furious, and a lot of things are happening all at once. But at times, there's flashes of really interesting strategy that you can put into play. Because there's only 7 cards, the rounds go very fast. But on top of all of this, there's also stage cards. They're going to be different every time you play. They're going to impact what happens during that bar fight. This is also set inside of the same universe as the Indies. So if you're familiar with some of the other card games that are available from level 99, you'll be very familiar with some of the characters that are in here. The artwork is really cool. It fits this very, very well. The concept is a little different and a little bit to get used to. But if you like party games and you like games with a lot of people and a lot of action, and quite frankly, a lot of randomness, because this game does have a lot of randomness, as you may think a bar fight would, this could be a good game for you. At the end of the day, we're going to give it a hit from Crits Happen. It's been something we've enjoyed with 3 and 4 players, and even at the top line of 7 and 8 players. The only thing I would highly suggest is when you're playing with 8 players, watch out for the drink in your other hand, and watch out for knocking into each other as you're trying to get your cards out, because there's a lot of action that happens inside a 7-card slugfest. Staying inside the level 99 universe, we're now going to look at Pixel Tactics 2. We reviewed Pixel Tactics, the original game, a little while ago and gave it a very good rating, and it's only gotten better. This is a very portable, very light, but highly strategic game that I have enjoyed very, very much with my playgroup and players of all different types. The concept is really simple. Each player has a 3x3 grid and a deck of identical cards. So the characters that the blue player has access to is the same characters that the red player has access to. You're each going to have a leader which sits in the center of that 9-card grid, and the grid is broken up between your front row, which is Vanguard, your middle row, which is your flank, because you have a character possibility on each side of your leader, and then the rear row. And the cards that you're going to play are going to have different abilities based on where they are in those rows. So someone may be very, very good in the flank or better in the vanguard, and you may play them in one of those rows, while your opponent who has access to the same characters may draw it in the same game and put it in the rear row to combat the strategy that you've put into play. And that's what makes Pixel Tactics so interesting. This game and this version has gotten even better, although there is something very big that we need to talk about at the end. Now, the gameplay is very simple. You're going to start off and you're going to choose from about 5 different cards which character you want to be your leader. Each character has 2 different ways of looking at the card. The primarily easy way to look at it is the majority of the card can be read with the 4 columns, and you can see that that's what the character side of the card is. The flip side shows the leader's attack and health, and then what their abilities are. You'll also notice that there is a gold star and a silver star to delineate between the 2, or differentiate between the 2. Once you've chosen, you put that leader into play, and from there it's going to be placing characters out turn by turn in the vanguard, the flank, or the rear, activating their powers and dealing damage, hopefully, to your opponent's leader and knocking them out. You don't have to wipe out each other's army, you just have to wipe out the opponent's leader. But as you can imagine, there's characters that can be put in front of them that can block, there's characters that can be put behind them or beside them that can heal, there's even characters that can resurrect. One of the more fun things I like about Pixel Tactics is if a character is ever dead or destroyed, they flip over and become a corpse on the field. And you have to take actions to remove them from play or leave them there and potentially have a card to resurrect them and bring them back into play as well. The characters in this version have gotten a little more aggressive, which is also something I'd like to note. This game is fast and furious already, but Pixel Tactics 2 has added a lot of good character abilities, no matter where you place them on the board, that are really going to make the interactions even more challenging of how you're going to string together combos based on where you place people, vanguard, flank, and rear. Now, a lot of people may say, as I did when I first saw Pixel Tactics, well, if each player only has 25 cards, how complex can it really be? Well, you have to remember that each character has a different ability based on the rank, vanguard, flank, or rear row that they're put in. In addition, has the ability to be discarded as an ability as well from the purple column on their card. This makes for multiple different versions of gameplay. We have played with the same characters multiple times over and never felt like we had the same game twice. The other thing that I would definitely like to point out, if you have this and the original Pixel Tactics, it is great, absolutely great to combine the two together. However, if you do, make sure, and this is just my opinion, no one else's, make sure that each player has access to the same characters. We tried doing this where we randomized everything and gave, just different decks to different people. What happened was, if one person had access to a card another person didn't have access to, it kind of took a little bit away from the strategy of knowing what could be coming in your deck and what to plan for. Knowing what's in that 25 card deck is a really, really big, important thing. So while I have enjoyed, and our playgroup has enjoyed, shuffling Pixel Tactics 1 and Pixel Tactics 2 together, I highly recommend if you do that, you set aside 25 cards and then match that to the other player's 25 cards. At the end of the day, Pixel Tactics does exactly what it sets out to do. It's a light, portable, highly strategic game that provides lots of replay value for a very small price. So for that, it gets a crit from critshappen.com. Next up, we have an absolutely adorable game for anyone who is a parent gamer with little gamers. This is from Yellow, and it is The Three Little Pigs. It is part of their new collection of storybook games. This is something that is deceptive. So first off, it is a beautiful box. It looks just like a book, and you can open it up and have a great storage tray for everything involved with the game. Now, if for any reason you're unfamiliar with the story of the Three Little Pigs, there were three little pigs who built three houses, one of straw, one of wood, and one of brick. And the big bad wolf would come by and try to huff and puff and blow their house down. Now, the straw and the wood didn't do so well, but the brick did. This takes that story and puts it to a gameplay that is enjoyable for both adults and for young children. It is a very simple game to learn. You start off with 5 dice. There are 3 black symbol dice and 2 white symbol dice. The difference is the black has the potential to roll a wolf's head. The white are very safe. You are allowed on your turn to roll your dice. Any wolves get put off to the side. Then you have to match symbols. So in this case, I rolled 2 roofs, a window, and a door. The colors don't matter, only the shapes. Now, I have 2 chances to re-roll any dice I want. So let's say this is the beginning of the game. You have to start building your houses, and you can build houses combined of any material, but you have to start with either a window or a door. So while rolling 2 roofs is really good, it's probably not going to get me off to a great start. So I'm going to keep my door, and I'm going to re-roll the other 3 remaining dice. Again, any wolves are going to have to be placed to the side. In this case, I rolled 2 roofs and a window, so I got the same result. I have 1 more re-roll, so let's see what we can get. I re-roll and I get 2 windows and a roof. Now, based on the number of symbols you matched, 2 lets you take from the straw, 3 lets you take from the wood, and 4 lets you take from the brick that matching symbol. In this case, I can start a house with either a window level or a door level, so I'm going to take a straw window and place that in front of me. The one wolf doesn't do anything. The only way the wolf comes out is if you were to roll 2 wolf heads on one turn. If that happens, you have to stop immediately. Now, like I said, you can build your houses of different materials. So if I started with a straw window, I could later add a wood door and finish it with a brick roof. It's a little funny looking, which makes it even more engaging for the younger kids. But what happens is there is this wolf spinner. Now, let's say on a future turn, an opponent rolled 2 wolf heads and puts them off to the side and ends his turn immediately. He's not able to buy anything, but he is able to destroy someone's house because he has become the big bad wolf. What happens essentially is they pick another opponent's house. So if I had this house completed with a roof on top, they could pick this house, blow the spinner, and whatever it lands on, in this case wood, my wood level is destroyed. Now, what does that mean at the end of the game? Well, you get points based on completed houses, you get points based on flower pots, you get points based on pig symbols that are going to be off to the side of each tile, and you want to not have your houses destroyed. That's always a bad thing. It's a really simple game. Roll dice in a Yahtzee-like style, match symbols, build houses, build multiple houses to get more points, and avoid the big bad wolf. Now, you don't have to blow this, you can spin it, but blowing it is suggested and makes it really, really fun. It's also, as you can see, very challenging as the materials move up to be destroyed. There are 3 different spots for straw, 2 different spots for wood, and 1 spot for brick, which makes destroying brick even more exciting. While it didn't happen in the story, it can happen here, and it makes it very, very fun. There's also some advanced rules you can play with cards that will allow bonus points for the person with the tallest house, the first person to complete an all wood house, straw house, or brick house, and different achievements like that. This is a really deceptive game. It's simple to learn, it's easy to teach, and it's really, really challenging because there's only so many strategies you can put into play, and you're always trying to avoid this big bad wolf. If you have little gamers, it's phenomenal. Older gamers have enjoyed this, but it's probably not a game that older gamers are going to play all by themselves around an adult evening of playing games. If you have younger kids, though, it's a phenomenal way of teaching them strategies, teaching them outcomes, having different types of interaction in games that they may not be used to, and it does it in an absolutely delightful way. In addition, on the very back page of the rule book, they've given you a little bit of an insert, here we go. The Baba Yaga is the next storybook game that's going to be coming out. So this is going to be a complete line of games that's coming out from Yellow. And it's very exciting for me because I have little gamers. I know a lot of people out there that do. Majority of people that I interact with are anywhere between the ages of 20 and 40. And there's a lot of people in that area that have younger kids and want them to be able to play games at the table with them. This is something that's both fun for them and enjoyable for the adults. So this is actually going to get a dual rating because it is so different in the game environment. If you're playing with only adults, it's probably a small hit of a game. But if you're playing with younger kids and younger gamers, it is an absolute blast and a crit of a game. Yellow's done a tremendous job both from a marketing perspective and from a tie-in of color, design, and excitement, but not too complex to where it's inaccessible to younger gamers. It's an exciting version of games, and it's something we're looking forward to seeing Baba Yaga and more games from this storybook line from Yellow. So at the end of the day, it's a crit or a hit, depending on your game group, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun, even if all you do is sit around and blow the spinner. Next up is Spyrium, or Spyrium, I'm still not 100% sure how to say this, from Asmodee. Now, this is an interesting game. This had a little bit of hype going into Gen Con. It's a 2 to 5 player game. It takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play. And it's a little deceptive as well. It's a Euro game. Full-on, straight-up Euro game. However, it uses, instead of worker placement spots, it uses channels along this 9-card grid. The cards are going to change, and there's going to be different sets of cards, A, B, and C. You will not always see all the cards from A, all the cards from B, but you will see all the cards from C. Now, each set of cards are going to have buildings to build, technologies to invent, and characters to act. In addition, you're going to have events that are going to happen, one per round, where you're going to be able to use your action disc to take a specific action. Some of them may be as simple as taking money or taking victory points. Some of them may be as complex as chaining together combos where you can use and ready a use or ready a building that you've already built. Now, it looks a little confusing, it is a little confusing, but once you understand the gameplay, it becomes very simple. There's some challenges that I have inside of this game. For example, when you play your turn, you're generally placing meeples out into channels between these cards. And then at different times, strategies will be enacted where you move from phase 1 to phase 2 and then get to pull your meeples back. Now, when you pull your meeples back, you can either buy a card, and if you buy a building, it goes on one side of your player card. If you buy a technology, it goes on the other. Buildings will get used and tapped, and you'll use resources to either gain Spyrium crystals or gain victory points. And technologies will give you benefits throughout the game. So very much like abilities is the easiest way to say it, that are always ongoing or looking for something at the end of the game. In addition, you're able to pull off a meeple and get gold equal to the amount of other meeples around a card. So if you're playing a 5-player game, for example, if everyone decided to put characters around this center card, the yellow player, for example, could pull off their character and get 4 money because there's 4 meeples around the card that they were adjacent to. This is great in a 4 or 5-player game. It's really hard in a 2-player game. In fact, money and money management is the hardest part about this game in a 2-player game. That's my biggest challenge. I feel that while this is a very fun and unique way to develop and show a Euro in motion, 2 players and 5 players are very, very different experiences. In fact, in my opinion, I really don't like playing this game with anything less than 4 players. 2 and 3 players makes it very challenging to gain money and has a little bit of a runaway leader problem. However, 4 and 5 players are absolute blasts of games. The technologies are really, really impactful. In fact, some of the early strategies we like to enact is gaining a technology very, very early and feeding off of that strategy. There's a lot of different strategies in the game, as well as building on top of buildings, moving your character's tokens up to be able to gain more money, and more importantly, one of the more unique systems is these player tokens or victory point tokens with characters in the game. There's going to be different characters that have this little blue symbol on them, and some of them are going to be able to take randomly from a face-down pile of these tokens and put them face up. And then when you pull a character off to activate them, you're going to be able to choose the token that you want to pull off of them to activate them. Some characters you'll want to choose the highest token. Some characters you'll want to choose the lowest token based on what each character's ability is. Now, this makes for a very interesting and very enjoyable game, but the replay is not there, and that's probably my biggest disappointment with this game. I really like it. I think the artwork is beautiful. I think playing in a 4 and 5 player setting is very competitive and very give and take around what you can do versus what you're going to do. I think in a 2 and 3 player game, it's a little harder for money management and has a little bit of a runaway leader problem. But overall, I would recommend it. I'm just curious as to how often it's going to hit the table based on what it does and how it does versus other Euros that are available to you that may do it in a more just enticing way to keep you at the table. Now, while I completely understand the differences between Euro-style games and Ameritrash-style games, I do feel that there were some little tiny things that were missed inside of Spyrium, or Spyrium, aside from a definition of how you pronounce it, that could have added a little bit of a flair to it. For example, none of the cards have a name on them. They just have what their abilities are, and they're all symbol driven. And I get that. That's a big part of Euro games, is symbol driven, because it's so hard, especially when you think about gaming in Europe and all the different countries and all the different languages that are spoken. The symbolism is a great advantage to games over there. However, I thought that there was a big miss that really could have made this game more flavorful without pushing it to the Ameritrash way so much, that would have allowed you to see the names of the buildings or the names of the characters on the cards and give you a little bit more of a connected feel to what it is you're playing. At the end of the day, this is a really cool steampunky kind of universe, and it's done really well. The artwork is beautiful. However, what it does, there's a lot of other Euro games out there that do it in a different style but a more fulfilling way. So while I've enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend for people to check it out, it's something that may, after a couple of plays, not so quickly find its way to the table as much as other Euros do. It is still very fun in terms of the style and the way that it does it with these cards and the channels. But again, because of that, and because of the challenges between a smaller game and a larger game, depending on the number of players, it's something that kind of holds itself back from almost being better than it could be. At the end of the day, it's going to get a hit from Crits Happen. We've enjoyed it. We think that other Euro gamers would enjoy it as well. And we'd love to hear from you as to your gameplay experience with your game group and how many times it's continuing to hit the table for you. So, Asmodee has a beautiful game. May not be for everyone, but for those that like Euro games would probably enjoy it very much, and it gets a hit. So I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired. But thankfully, the fun keeps coming. So sitting in front of me is Tsuro of the Seas from Calliope Games. Now, I knew a lot about Tsuro going into Gen Con. I've played it hundreds of times. It's a great, fun game that anyone can pick up. You have a dragon that represents you, you place a tile and follow a pathway, and as the maze builds, you're potentially forced off, and the last dragon standing wins. Or I guess the last dragon flying wins is what it really should be. Well, this is a different take on the same type of gameplay with a few more mechanics thrown in. One of my biggest challenges that I had with Tsuro, the original game, was it was a building game. And what I mean by building is it started off with not really too much strategy and a lot of luck. It was really, I'm going to place a tile, okay, we're kind of getting closer, okay, now we're really close, okay, now things are happening, and then I'm off the board. There really, at the beginning of the game, wasn't a lot of tense moments or hard decisions to make. It was really kind of random. This gives you decisions immediately from the beginning of the game. Now, very much like Tsuro, you have a token. In this case, you're a boat. You've placed on the edge of the board, and just like in Tsuro, you're going to place tiles with different pathways on them, follow that pathway to the end, and be prepared for the next turn to either lay a tile and continue moving, or when you get close to other players, their tiles could force you to move as well. However, this game adds Daikaiju. Daikaiju are giant sea monsters, very much like dragons, who are trying to eat other tiles, each other possibly, and boats from you and other players. It's very simple. This plays exactly the same way as Tsuro does, except the Daikaiju have special movement. On your turn, the first thing you're going to do is roll 2 dice. And on a 6, 7, or 8, which if you understand odds of rolling dice comes up quite a bit, on a 6, 7, or 8, the Daikaiju are going to move. Now the number of Daikaiju on the board scales based on the number of players. We're here in an 8-player game and there's 4 on the board. In less players, there's more Daikaiju. Now if you roll a 6, 7, or 8, you then roll a single die. And then based on the result of that die, these tiles will either rotate or they will move orthogonally. If they land on another Daikaiju, then they eat that Daikaiju and it's removed from the board. There must always be at least 3 Daikaiju. If you roll a 6, you add a Daikaiju, and you add based off of grid rolls and mapping to find out where they land on here. The Daikaiju also have values from 1 to 5, and that will determine which one moves first. So the lowest number will move first, followed by the next lowest, and so on and so forth. If there's ever a tie, you and the other players can decide, or I believe it's the active player possibly that can decide how that happens. But if the Daikaiju lands on your tile, then it eats you and your tile, and you're out of the game. If it ends adjacent to an edge where your boat is, it also eats you, and you're out of the game. So as you can see from this layout, there's 2 Daikaiju near these 2 players, there's 2 Daikaiju near these 2 players, and these guys are trying to protect themselves. There are decisions from the very beginning of the game that you have to make on where you're going to go and hopefully avoid other players and the other Daikaiju. And it makes it much more fun of a game from beginning to end, in my opinion. There's also an expansion that you can get that adds cannons, whirlpools, and tsunamis and things like that, which makes it even more chaotic and more fun. In my opinion, a little too much randomness with the expansion, but the base game is leaps and bounds ahead of the original Tsuro, in my opinion. This makes for a much more enjoyable, just as quick, and decisions from the very beginning fun game to play with all. The age groups can span, I believe it recommends for ages 8 and up, but we have played with as young as 5 players, and everyone has enjoyed this game. Because it scales to 8 players, it's a great game to play with a lot of people in a party, or it is, because the Daikaiju will scale the number of them based on the number of players in the game, great, just as much fun with 2, 3, and 4 players as well. Overall, I'm very happy to say that Tsuro of the Seas gets a big Daikaiju crit from Crits Happen. Next up, we get into a couple of games with more realistic themes. This is Rise of Augustus from Asmodee Games. It's a 2 to 6 player game for ages 8 and up and plays quickly in about 30 minutes. Now, this is essentially Rome Demands Bingo. This is what happens when you take a very familiar mechanic, slap on some really good artwork, and some light strategy to make for a very fun and accessible game by everyone. This is a game that you can teach in the matter of minutes. The game begins with each player getting 7 meeples or garrisons. Then they are all going to be dealt out objective cards. And in the corner are symbols that correspond to tokens that are in this bag. What's going to happen is on a player's turn, someone is going to be the town crier for the entire turn. They're going to pull out a symbol, and in this case, I pulled out a catapult. And we're going to tell all the players that we pulled out a catapult. Any player with an objective card that has a catapult symbol on it can place one of their garrison units on that symbol. Once they complete all of the discs from one card, they can then turn it in to get the rewards that are on the other side of the card. In addition, at the end of the game, there are victory points. Now, there are senators and there are locations. The locations could provide you wheat or gold. That's important, and we'll get to that in a second. But essentially, each of the objectives allow you to gain advantages as you complete them. The game ends when someone has completed a certain number of objectives based on the number of players in the game, and then everyone counts up their total points from the cards they've completed and any additional end-of-game bonus points they get, and that person is the winner with the highest points. Now on my turn, I've pulled out 1 disc and 1 symbol. I continue to do that until I pull out as many symbols as it takes for me to get to a wild. And a wild has all of the symbols on it. That one, when it comes out, each player can place a garrison unit on any space on one of their objective cards and complete and ends the turn. Now, why is that important? Because all of the symbols that you pull out of the bag stay out of the bag until you pull a joker. There's also a reference card to show you how many different symbols are in the bag. So you can get an idea if somebody pulls out 4 swords and there's 6 swords in the bag, how many are roughly left. Now once you pull out the joker, you finish, all the players will finish placing their garrison units. You're going to go ahead and put all of those symbols back in the bag and shake it up, give it to the next player, and they become the next town crier. Now there's only 1 wild card, or excuse me, 2 wild cards in the bag. So it's going to take a little bit some time to pull one out. Although at times it could be the very first one pulled out. Now, when you complete an objective card, you place it out in front of you, you remove the garrison units off, and yes, there are rewards to get you more garrison units. There are ways to shift your garrisons between objectives that you're working on completing, but more importantly, you draft another card from the center row to be your next objective. So again, a little more strategy layered onto a bingo type mechanic. So if you decide you want to be able to get a smaller value point card, but one that has a really good effect when you complete it, you can do that and put it in your area of objectives you're trying to complete. In addition to that, there are 3 different types of tokens that will score you points throughout the game. Remember earlier I mentioned about wheat and gold. As you complete objectives that have a wheat or a gold symbol on them, you'll place them into your completed objectives area. Whoever has the most gold or the most wheat gets a 5-point victory token that they hold on to. Once somebody else matches or exceeds them, that token will shift to that player. So these 2 gold tokens will be shifting throughout the game. There is a series of 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10-point tokens that are first objectives. What I mean by that is the first person to have 3 senators completed from their cards will get 2 points. The first person to have 3 green areas or land-controlled areas will get 4. One of each color will get you 6. There's 3 colors in the game. The first for 3 pinks will get you 8, and the first for 3 oranges will get you 10. As you can imagine, the pinks and the oranges are a little harder than the greens, so this will step up in difficulty in terms of the quantity and the types of symbols that are on the card for you to complete. In addition, there are brown tokens that also range from 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 points that require you to have a certain number of completed objectives in front of you. Now, what's going to happen, and I said earlier that the number of objectives needed to finish the game scales, that's actually incorrect. This actually is 7 objectives, and that will complete the game. But that's very important to know because the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10-point tokens that require you to have completed objectives require you to have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 completed objectives. You can only choose at one point in the game to select that. So if early in the game I have 3 completed objectives, but I have a lot of hard objectives to finish completing in my play area, I may decide to use my 3 completed objectives to get this 4 victory point token and ensure that I keep it. Once I get one of these, or once I'm the first player to get one of the gray tokens, those will stay with me and they do not shift like the gold ones do. Now, this is a strategic portion of the game because once you select one of the brown tokens, you cannot select any other brown tokens for the rest of the game. So if early in the game I decide I want to make sure I get 4 points, so I choose that token, if later in the game I have 5 completed objectives and could get the 8-point token, I can't because I've already successfully achieved an earlier one. So this is kind of a press your luck mechanic of how quickly do you think you can get that many objectives to score that token, or do you take a lower point token ensuring you some extra points? Now, as I said earlier, there's 7 completed objectives by any one player will end the game. The interesting thing about that is just because that person completes 7 doesn't mean they're going to win the game. It just triggers the end of the game. Because again, at the end of the game, you're going to add up all the points from the tokens you have, plus all the points from the tokens that are all the points from the cards that you've completed, as well as any end of game bonus points as well. So we've had many games where the person who has 4 or 5 completed objectives ends up winning because they have completed more challenging, higher point objectives and gotten end of point game scoring bonuses versus the person who had 7 and rushed with some smaller value points for their cards. Overall, this is really simple to learn, very easy to teach, and very, very luck driven. That's the biggest thing that you need to know about this game. There is strategy, but the strategy comes in which cards you draft and how quickly you can then complete them. You can put a strategy in to say, I'm only going to go after green areas that are very easy to complete, but they give you lower points and you're going for quantity. However, it's still at the whim of what comes out of this bag. If anyone has played bingo, you know sometimes you're stuck and you can't get I-22. Overall, it's a fun game, and it's got a great theme, very light, and in my opinion, very, very beautiful artwork. The component quality is great, the card stock is phenomenal, and the pictures are very clear. The only thing that I would caution some people on is how fast the person is pulling out tokens from this bag. Definitely make sure you pace yourself to the game group so that no arguments happen. Not saying that did in our critical household, but it's a good idea and a good suggestion. Overall, Rise of Augustus gets a hit from Crits Happen. It's got a very familiar mechanic, a very good theme, and a very good layer of strategy that a majority of people will enjoy, both on their first few initial gameplays and keep it pulling out for larger gameplays and parties or larger game groups. So on to our final game, the Downfall of Pompeii. This is a reprint from Mayfair Games. And a critical fan that we ran into at Gen Con suggested we take a look at this, and we're very glad we did. So thank you, Chris Kopax. This is a devilishly interesting and fun game. The concept is very simple. It is Mount Vesuvius about to explode and destroy the city of Pompeii. You, as your meeples, will be in the city trying to get out. And there's essentially 3 phases of the game. You're going to have a deck of cards that will have numbers and colors corresponding to buildings in the city. In the first phase of the game, as you draw cards, you're going to be able to place your meeples, these little circular kind of cylinder characters, into the buildings of matching colors and numbers. Then, once the first AD 79 card is drawn, that phase ends. So throughout the game, people are going to be adding characters to the board in different areas. Now, the thing you're going to note is there are 7 different exits to the game board. And there are additional buildings that have no color and no number that will allow you to add more characters in the second phase. And what happens is after that first AD 79 card is drawn, the second phase begins, where you're going to be drawing cards and playing more people to the city, but you're allowed to bring in relatives. So there's going to be specific rules that allow you to place a character and then place an additional character near in a same building or in adjacent buildings or things that are close by. Now, as you can imagine, throughout these first 2 phases, there's going to be a lot of people. The second phase is going to include omen cards, and these are all going to be shuffled into one big deck. The omen cards, when they're drawn, allows the player that draws them to take one of an opponent's characters and throw them into the volcano, much like Joe versus the volcano. And in our house, you must make that noise and laugh quite loudly. There's something morbid about that, but it works. So every omen card that comes out is potentially going to lose you one of your meeples if an opponent draws that card. Now, as you dig deeper into the stack, the second AD 79 card is going to come out. When that happens, all the cards and any remaining meeples all players have not placed on the board are placed off to the side and put back into the box. From there, the lava is going to start flowing. So by the end of the second phase, there's going to be several meeples in the volcano already having been gobbled up and sacrificed. But from here, at the very beginning of the phase, you're going to randomly draw tiles out. Now the tiles are all going to have symbols on them as well as lava. There are 6 different areas on the city where lava could start from. In this case, I drew a mask. The first one is placed on top of that symbol. You then continue to draw tiles. I drew a vase this time, which is good, so this goes on the vase. You continue to draw tiles until all 6 of the spaces that lava could start from are filled. So I drew a scroll. This one would go on the scroll. I would then draw more. I would get a pillar, and this would go on the pillar. This is phenomenal because what happens is if you draw a symbol, like we just drew a mask, the mask is already covered up. Now I have to place this orthogonally adjacent to a fire symbol or a lava tile that has the mask symbol. If there is a meeple on that tile, those guys are taken off the tile and thrown into the volcano again. You continue doing this until you have one of each of the symbols that starts off covered up. So if we have all of them covered up now, that's great. But this event, as you can imagine, is going to take some time because you could draw 4 or 5 mask tiles or 4 or 5 vase tiles and have a bunch of lava in one part of the city. So once you have all 6 of those spaces covered, then the real fun begins because some of your people are going to have died during this phase and they're going to be inside here as well. So we may have each lost 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or 7 people into that volcano. Then you get to move and try to escape the city. From here in the third phase, what's going to happen is you're going to draw a lava tile and place a lava tile and then move up to 2 of your meeples. And the movement is very interesting because it depends on how many other people are in the same tile that you start from. If no one is there, you can move 1. If there's 2 other people there, you can move multiple spaces. And that's going to make you run towards one of the 7 exits. Now, as you can imagine, when you place these lava tiles and they're going orthogonally, they can cover up and block the exits. So you may be running to the exit and someone may put a lava tile blocking your way to get out. If at any time when a lava tile is placed, there are meeples on there, no matter if they're yours or anyone else's, whoa, they go into the volcano. At the end of the game, whoever has the most people that have escaped the city will win the game and have the most points. However, in the event of a tie, you go to how many people are inside the volcano. Now, a really interesting pro tip that Demo Ken gave us, who is a great friend, good guy, and fun gamer. He said that if you have a battery-powered votive candle that's like a little tea light, to put that into the middle of this, and it makes a great effect because it makes the volcano flicker. Absolutely fun time. The first time that I played this, I actually felt like I was playing The Adventurers, the Pyramid of Horus. We did a review on that last year if anyone has played that game from Fantasy Flight. It's got a similar type feel, but instead of lava tiles coming down on top of you, you have ceiling tiles coming down on top of you. That was a much more press your luck of pushing into an area to then escape the area. This is much more strategic in terms of placing your people and then a little bit of luck with where the lava tiles come out and then running your little Pompeian butts off to get out of this city as fast as possible. It's a very engaging game. It's very fun. It's got a bit of a morbid theme to it, but it is light enough done that you can enjoy it over an evening. It's 2 to 4 players. It plays in about 30 minutes. And depending on your opinions of the morbidity of people being thrown into the volcano, we have played with as young as 5, and the 5-year-olds have loved it. It's colors, it's numbers, and run out of the city as fast as possible. So, the Downfall of Pompeii, while maybe not the most upbeat game, can still be fun and gets a hit from Crits Happen. Whew! That was a lot. I'm exhausted, but it was fun, and I hope you had fun too. Lots of hits and lots of crits came back to the Critical household from Gen Con 2013 this year. If you didn't get a chance to go to Gen Con or you didn't get a chance to run into us at Gen Con, we hope to see you there next year in 2014. But until we see you next time, thank you very much for watching. We'd love to hear from you. Of any of these games, have they hit your table? What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? Leave your thoughts below as a comment in the YouTube channel. You can of course join in the discussion on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, or at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, thank you so much for coming with us on this journey on our post-Gen Con Critical Strike. Keep rolling those dice. We hope they're all crits.